A happy woman is always a lucky woman, always thinking of the woman less lucky, always thinking of the women less free, always thinking of the things that didn't happen to her and happened instead to another less lucky woman. A happy woman is always a grateful woman, always saying thank you, never sure to whom, God perhaps, or the unlucky women themselves, always counting her blessings like beads on a tasbih, always holding her happiness like an unexpected, extravagant gift, always saying, oh, you shouldn't have, to fate itself. A happy woman is always a lucky woman, always wondering when her luck will run out.
According to a report released by the UN on International Women's Day this year, Pakistan tops the list of countries holding prejudiced views against women. The report states that at least 99.81% of the population holds at least one sexist bias. Pakistan is considered the sixth most dangerous country in the world for women. This is why we march.
When we talk about the women's movement, we're just talking right now about a particular era of the women's movement. But if we're talking about the Women's Action Forum and how we got to where we are today, then we have to go back to the General Zia's martial law period. Zia had come in with this promise that he would hold elections within 90 days. And of course, 90 days became 11 years. So there was a reason. The reason given was we have to Islamize the country and its laws. So the Hudud Ordinance was the first so-called Islamization law, and it covered 5 different subjects. The zina section is what concerned us as women. Women were being thrown into jail. We've never had so many women in jail as we did when these laws were there. Lots of women were angry. They were angry at the continuous attack on their rights. They were angry at the increasing harassment in public spaces. And so the response was from the women. So it ended up, and when we were discussing how and what to do, we decided we needed a platform with a minimum program where we brought together the maximum number of voices. And so we eventually ended up starting what was the Women's Action Forum. We were, ironically enough, not trying to start a women's movement, I have to say. We were trying to just get as many Pakistanis mobilized on this issue as possible.
On the 12th of February 1983, Farida, along with scores of other women, carried out a historic march in Lahore. Police brutality was rife, and several women were jailed for this march. But this didn't dampen their spirits, and their activism continued right until the end of the Zia regime and the restoration of democracy in Pakistan.
Zia did incredible harm to this country. He has managed to ingrain and inculcate a particular version of conservative, patriarchal, and non-democratic Islamic notions in state as well as society. So while the state may have changed and he's no longer there, society has shifted in the way that we think about things. Things will change, but it will take a lot more effort.
Gender is not between your legs, it's between your ear. आपके ब्रेन में, आपके दिमाग में है. पाकिस्तान में सबसे पहले तो रहना और अपनी स्पेस बनाना सबसे ज़्यादा ज़रूरी चीज़ जो उनसे है. फिर बाकी चीज़ें आती हैं. Claim your space and make your space.
इस तरह की ज़िंदगी में कभी ना गुजार रही होती अगर मेरे माँ बाप होते. मेरी बहुत कम एज में शादी कर दी गई और उस इंसान से कर दी गई जो मुझे कभी इज्जत नहीं दे सका, जो मेरी फीलिंग्स नहीं समझ सकता, जो मुझे कभी भी एक लड़की की जो ख्वाहिशात होती हैं कम एज में, एक उसकी ख्वाब होते हैं, वो कोई पूरे नहीं कर सकता, मुझे कोई नहीं दे सकता, किसी ने नहीं दिए, किसी ने मेरे बारे में नहीं सोचा.
वो मोमेंट आया जब मैं और मेरे पेरेंट्स आमने सामने थे और हम अपने ये सारी बातें कर रहे थे. I said I can't marry अ वुमन बीइंग अ वुमन मुझे उस तरह से नहीं, आई फील लाइक अ वुमन व्हाई डू यू फोर्स मी टू गेट मैरिड, गेट एंगेज्ड, और यू नो हर किसी की अपनी सेक्सुअलिटी और जेंडर है, बट यू कांट लाइक फोर्स मी कि किसी इंसान की मैं लाइफ ऐसे करूं। मेरे 2 भाई हैं, एक भाई ने कहा कि तुम ऐसे को बदलो नहीं तो मैं तुम्हें आग लगा दूंगा या मैं खुद को आग लगा लूँगा।
उसको कोई पूछने वाला नहीं था, लिहाजा उसको पता था इसके पीछे कोई नहीं है जो मुझे पूछेगा। सारी रात बैठ के मैं रोती होती थी, बीच सहन बैठ के रोती थी, अपने अल्लाह से कहती होती थी कि ये मेरी ज़िंदगी है, ऐसी ज़िंदगी नहीं चाहिए मुझे। मैंने सुसाइड भी करने की कोशिश की थी 2-3 बार।
वो बहुत मुश्किल है कि इफ़ यू आर अ ट्रांसजेंडर एंड इफ़ यू आर मुस्लिम सो हाउ यू, क्योंकि वो लोग कहते हैं तो गुनाह है ये। जब ये ब्रिटिश कॉलोनियल लॉ आया, क्रिमिनल लॉ अमेंडमेंट 1871, anybody who dresses like a woman, wear hairs like a woman, or a performing artist, they should be arrested and put behind bars. तो then उन्होंने सबको पकड़ा, जेलों में डाला। ये वायलेंस तब से स्टार्ट हुआ।
मुझे शौक़ था बेटे का नहीं बेटी का। मैं 18 साल की थी तो तब मेरी मतलब बेटी बताई तो कहते बेटा होना चाहिए था, बेटी ना होती। फिर उसके बाद मतलब वो 4 साल की होगी, फिर मेरी एक और बेटी हो गई। अबॉर्शन करवा दिया था उन्होंने मेरा कि नहीं करना, बच्चा करना ही नहीं है अब इसको, ये वो।
हर मोड़ पे एक नया इम्तिहान जो होता है ना फैमिली के साथ, रिलेशंस पे, अगर आपकी बहन की शादी नहीं होगी तो आपकी वजह से उसका रिश्ता टूट जाएगा। फिर इतने साल मुझे इस तरह करने के बाद मुझे लगा कि तुम्हारी तो जगह ही नहीं यहाँ पर। फिर मैंने अपनी अलग से भी जगह बनाई।
मैं समझती थी कि फिर उससे बेहतर यही है कि फिर मैं खुद ही अपने लिए कुछ करूं। मुझे वापस चले जाना चाहिए, मुझे अपने लिए कुछ करना चाहिए और मैं कर सकती हूं। उनके हाथों अपनी बेटियां दे के एक उन्हीं की तरह की सोच रखने वाली लड़कियां नहीं बनाना चाहती, उनको एक अच्छी सोच वाली बनाना चाहती हूँ, उनको एक मजबूत और अच्छी परवरिश उनकी करना चाहती हूँ।
We absolutely cannot forget the role that financial independence plays in women's liberation. The reason women lack that emotional strength or freedom in so many cases to leave abuse is because they are taught from day one that their value comes from being from relation to men.
Patriarchal cultures have certain characteristics. This whole issue of so-called honor, where a woman's body embodies the family honor and the men are made responsible. That's something actually you get from the Mediterranean all the way up to India. It doesn't go further. Then you have the refusal to allow women into the market spaces. There's this respectability which is linked with notions of works and spaces, which I think is particular to us. That's why, to me, the Audit March is so important. It's only been there for 2 years and it's amazing how much difference it's made.
Karachi is actually what started Audit March in 2018, if I'm not wrong. And Lahore actually started after looking at how they did it and what they did. In 2019, that was a proper first march that we did. So we don't take funding from NGOs, from political parties, from corporations, and from big businesses. Apart from funding, we also don't associate ourselves with any of these. जो लोग थोड़ा सा भी contribute कर सकते हैं वो पैसे contribute करते हैं, जो monetarily contribute नहीं कर सकते वो अपना labor contribute करते हैं. So that's how we organize it.
मेरा ख़्याल है कि ये ग्लोबल वुमेंस स्ट्राइक जो है उसके साथ इसका बहुत एक अहम लिंक है। हर जगह पे हम देखते हैं कि ऑस्टेरिटी नाफिज की जा रही है, और जब ऑस्टेरिटी नाफिज की जाती है तो कहने को वो सादगी होती है जो कि हुकूमतें अपना रही होती हैं, लेकिन दर हकीकत वो अपने तमाम तर मुआशी बहरान का जो बोझ है वो मेहनत कश तबके पर डाल रहे होते हैं। जिस तरह से मेहनतकश औरत के ऊपर जो बड़े हमले किए गए हैं और किए जा रहे हैं, उसके ख़िलाफ़ जो है वो तहरीकें उभरी हैं और ग्लोबल वुमेन स्ट्राइक भी उसी फिनोमेनन का एक हिस्सा है।
So the first march, we did receive criticism that the organizers were, and even the attendees of the march were, from mostly a privileged demographic, which is a very valid criticism and one that we wanted to address.
लीडरशिप्स जो हैं वो मूवमेंट्स की, वो उनका तबक़ाती किरदार बुर्जुआ हो सकता है और अक्सर होता भी है, लेकिन उससे हम जो इश्यूज़ हैं उसको इनवैलिडेट नहीं कर सकते, राइट? मी टू मूवमेंट वो तो सिर्फ एक मैं समझती हूँ कि वो तो सोशल मीडिया पर एक बात है ना। हमारे मुल्क में मिसाल के तौर पे पाकिस्तान में कितनी ख़वातीन मेहनतकश तबके की होंगी जो कि स्मार्टफोन्स ओन करती होंगी इवन, या फिर जो इंटरनेट उस तरह से इस्तेमाल करती होंगी कि वो मी टू का हैशटैग इस्तेमाल कर सकें, उस पर बात कर सकें।
So the second march, there was outreach to a lot more underprivileged communities.
So there were a lot more people from working class families, from working class neighborhoods, from religious minorities, from gender minorities who took ownership of the march almost.
औरत मार्च एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म था जहां हमें लगा कि हाँ, यहाँ सब औरतों ने अपनी आवाज़ उठानी है, तो हमें भी यहाँ पर जाना है। Why I was the part of औरत मार्च because of this campaign के लोगों को बताया जाए। सबसे पहले तो औरतों में कन्फ्यूजन आ गई जो वहाँ पे प्रेस क्लब में थी, लेकिन बाय टाइम वो बहुत ज़्यादा सपोर्टिव होती गई और फिर इस ग्रुप में भी शामिल हो गए। व्हाट्सएप पे भी हमारा बातचीत होती रहती थी।
I was quite honored that, oh my God, now I have a WhatsApp group where I can reach out to women who are working on all of these issues of female empowerment and gender violence in Pakistan. And I don't know how to do anything except draw. So then I'm trying to use that in a way that might help in some way or form. This is an image I drew based on acid attacks.
Although reported acid attacks in Pakistan have dropped over the last 5 years, it is nonetheless an alarming reality for women in Pakistan who face life-altering physical and psychological consequences.
डिवोर्स देने के 3 महीने बाद वो मैं बच्चे स्कूल छोड़ने जा रही थी। सुबह 7 बजे के करीब, कोई अक्टूबर या नवंबर का महीना था, तो पीछे से आए हैं, आके उन्होंने मेरे ऊपर एसिड फेंका, जिसमें 2 मेरी बच्चियां साथ थीं, एक बड़ी और एक छोटी। उनके बाजुओं पे छींटे आई हैं और मेरे फेस पे। उसी वक्त भाई ने FIR कटवाई थी, तो 6 महीने या 9 साल ही कह दें उसमें केस चलता रहा। फिर उसके बाद वो जेल में है। अब हाई कोर्ट में उसने अपील की है अपनी रिहाई की। अब दोबारा से केस शुरू हो रहा है, तो मुझे डर खौफ है कि बाहर आके फिर वो कुछ करे ना। डिप्रेशन तो जाहिर सी बात है यही था कि पता नहीं क्या होगा, अब ज़िंदगी किस तरह कटेगी और पता नहीं लोगों का सामना कैसे करूँगी, क्योंकि मैं फेस नहीं कर सकती थी किसी को। उस वक्त मैं सामने नहीं जाती थी। और अब भी है ऐसा कि मैं शादियों में जाना, बाहर लोगों के उनमें नहीं मैं जाती, क्योंकि जब लोग देखते हैं ना, वो नज़रें मुझसे बर्दाश्त नहीं होती हैं। फिर हर एक को जवाब देना वो मुझसे नहीं होता। बाज़ लोगों की सोच भी होती है कि पता नहीं इसी ने कुछ किया होगा, तो उस चीज़ से ज़रा मैं डरती हूँ। तो इस पर कुछ होना चाहिए कि इसको रोका जाए। जब तक ये एसिड मिलता रहेगा तो ये तो सब कुछ होता रहेगा।
My poster for this year's Aurat March was dedicated to our collective hopes and dreams for the women of Pakistan. On top are women at the core of our economy, the home-based workers keeping our crafts alive, and the farmers who work in the fields. Below, the archways lead to a world where girls and women are safe outdoors, happily cycling, walking, and just being themselves. In the center is a girl pursuing her education. The central figure is also an homage to Malala and her quote, "One child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world." And that's the dream. So we got permission to paste the posters at Hussain Chowk in Lahore. But I got the feeling that the posters won't last very long and they'd be taken down. I'm quite used to that kind of thing, where anything pro-woman is torn down, and that's exactly what happened. It's a question of who do these streets belong to, and why do they not belong to us?
अगर एक मार्च की वजह से इतनी बड़ी चीज़ हो सकती है तो बहुत चीज़ें हो सकती हैं। तो आप हमारे साथ चलें। हम तो कहते हैं औरत मार्च का नाम औरत है, लेकिन हम सबके लिए खड़े हैं। ये मंशूर लगा हुआ, इधर आके पढ़ लें।
आप पढ़ें, कोई मसला नहीं, आप अगर चाहते हैं तो हम आपको एक पैम्फलेट दे देंगे।
मुझे वो दे, मैं वो पढ़ूंगा।
मैं आपको देती हूँ।
This year's manifesto called for an end to economic violence that emphasized the gender wage gap, a basic living wage. It called for the recognition of women's unpaid labor to the care economy, the demand for the prevention of sexual violence, for the right of consent and choice over women's bodies and the right to choose how many babies women want, the demand for environmental justice and access to clean air for all. It also advocated for police reform, equal access to institutions for sexual and gender minorities and people with disabilities, the condemnation of war, safety for all religious minorities, and democratic rights.
हम लोगों ने अपना मंशूर उर्दू में भी लिखा था, अंग्रेजी में भी लिखा था, और उसका पर्पस ये था कि सारे पढ़ सकें और समझ सकें। जिन लोगों को पढ़ना लिखना नहीं आता, जब हम मोबिलाइजेशन करने जाते थे तो हम उनको खड़े होकर पढ़ के सुनाते थे। There should be no excuse for people to not believe in the agenda just because they haven't read the agenda.
Both the media and men at large are simply not interested in engaging with any narrative about women unless they can attack it.
The slogans from the previous year's Aurat March sparked major controversy, whereby participants faced extreme criticism and abuse from online trolls as well as the mainstream media. Trolls went as far as taking marchers' photos with their placards and doctoring obscenities or false slogans onto them.
This placard went viral which said, Khana khud garam kar lo. Not even cook your own food, like just heat it up. Many people perceived it as a rejection of the South Asian woman's identity. Since that placard went up, several cases of murder have been reported over men not getting their food on time or not getting the food that they want. I think that the first time that my father threatened to leave home and then did leave, it was because he came home from work and he didn't get food within like the next 10 minutes. I never found out if my father saw that placard, but I thought it was laughable how people thought it was a joke. Because that night when I was 10, I was the most scared I'd ever been in my 10-year-old life.
I think that one of the most important achievements of Aurat March is bringing sexuality outside of the confines of the home and out into the open.
My body, my choice is a very important slogan in the West, but we embodied it and we turned it into our own.
For me, when I heard my body, my choice, my first idea is, of course, my body, my choice. How is that even something that people will argue about? But the way people here take it, it's such a conservative society that even saying something like I have rights over my own body immediately becomes sexual, becomes something that's controversial. And it's like, oh, these loose liberal women just want to corrupt our Muslim society by saying that they want to walk around in bikinis and have like loose relationships.
If you rape us, our placards won't say, please don't rape us anymore. It will say, my body, my choice, and you cannot do anything about it because we're not going to let you do anything to us anymore.
So this year's march, the backlash has really escalated. A right-wing religious leader has asked his followers, which number in the 100,000s, to stop the march by force.
In February, only a few weeks before the march, a lawyer known as Azhar Siddiq filed a petition to impose restrictions on the Aurat March on the grounds that it was funded by anti-state parties. The petition alleged that the march was anti-Islam and anti-culture, and it asserted that the march was spreading lawlessness, anarchy, and vulgarity via slogans and placards. However, the Lahore High Court went on to allow the march, stating that freedom of expression cannot be banned. Although the petition's demands did not go through, there was a mixture of emotions outside the court.
They feel कि उनका privilege threaten हो रहा है किसी भी level पे, तबकाती level पे, आपके सूबाई level पे, language के level पे, ऑफ कोर्स जेंडर के लेवल पे, तो देन जो लोग इस चीज़ को एक्सप्लॉइट करने के आदी बन गए हैं वो उसकी अपोजिशन करते हैं, एंड दिस इज़ नॉट एक्सेप्टेबल।
अदालत को इस तरह की पिटीशंस को इंटरटेन नहीं करना चाहिए। कहाँ है हमारे हकूक? क्यों हमें मारा जाता है? क्यों हमारे खिलाफ रेप किया जाता है? जब हम कहते हैं मेरा जिस्म मेरी मर्जी, तो हम कहते हैं कि ये जिस्म मेरा है, रेप ना करो। हम अब भी मार्च करेंगे, हम अगले 10 सालों तक मार्च करते रहेंगे, और ये मार्च इतना बड़ा होगा कि पाकिस्तान की आधी आवाम जो है वो सड़कों पे निकलेगी और वो बात करेगी।
हमें अपने हक के लिए लड़ना आता है, हम लड़ेंगे और लड़ते रहेंगे जब तक कि हमारे हकूक हमें नहीं दिए जाएंगे, हम तब तक लड़ते रहेंगे। आज़ादी, आज़ादी,
आज़ादी। The whole point of that red banner was to show society a mirror and say, "Bhai, ab aina dekho. We're here. This has happened to us, and we're not backing down."
In spite of the multiple threats, the march in Lahore went smoothly. The same cannot be said about Islamabad, where men infiltrated the demonstration and hurled sticks and rocks, injuring several marchers. The men reportedly belonged to religious extremist groups.
If the problem is serious, the words will also be serious. We're done mollycoddling society. We're not going to do it anymore.
मैं इसलिए मार्च करती हूँ क्योंकि एक सोशलिस्ट निज़ाम के लिए जिद्दोजहद लाजिम है।
I march because it's always time to stand up and be counted.
I march for women that don't even know that there's an Aurat march.
I march because I want to have a same space which other cisgenders have.
मुझे मर्द की तरह ज़िंदगी गुजारनी है और हर औरत इसीलिए घर से निकलती है।
I march so that 50% of us who happen to be women aren't taken out of the labor force.
I march in the hope that one day I won't have to.